The neighborhood sighed in the gentle embrace of early autumn, with leaves tipping their edges in copper and gold, a tranquil scene, painted with strokes of serenity, where every house stood as a testament to suburban dreams and unspoken peace treaties. Mine was no exception, a modest abode, tucked neatly between similarly framed havens, where the grass grew obediently and the mail arrived like clockwork. Karen lived across the street. Her house, glaringly white, was a citadel of rules and regulations. She wore authority like an ill-fitting crown, her eyes ever watchful, her clipboard never far from reach, a self-appointed custodian of neighborhood decency. Karen thrived in the minutiae of communal living, her mission to maintain an unwavering order, her vigilance unyielding. It began with the refuse bins, a minor infraction, really just a mere inch encroaching upon her pristine boundary. Her note fluttered on my door like a disapproving leaf. Stern and officious, I obliged, of course, nudging the bin back into conformity with little more than a resigned sigh. I had no taste for disputes. Yet, Karen's world revolved around such trivialities. Her incursions were a dance of petty grievances, each step echoing through the neighborhood grapevine. The grass in her yard was clipped with military precision, a stark contrast to my wilder, more laissez-faire approach. The creeping tendrils of ivy on my fence seemed to raise her ire, silent but palpable. But I was patient. I saw these skirmishes as mere ripples in the pond of life, disturbances that would fade if not fed. My history taught me resilience to absorb and transform rather than react. So, I did just that. When Karen's glare lingered on my untamed hedges, I met it with a wave, a neighborly gesture that often went unreturned. Despite her scrutiny, I found solace in small rebellions, finding beauty in the randomness of nature she so despised. My garden flourished in its chaos, a tapestry of wild blooms and untrained vines. To me, it was an oasis. To Karen, a frontier of disorder. Then came the water bill, a sharp spike. Inexplicable at first. I noticed when the water meter spun like an overworked ballerina, its rhythm discordant with my frugal habits. I mused at the irony, how water, the universal solvent, was now a source of mystery and unease. A quiet investigation revealed the truth, a surreptitious diversion of my water line, an audacious theft that bore Karen's fingerprints in its precise execution. She, with her pristine lawn and the constant hiss of sprinklers, had found a way to assuage her thirst for perfection on my dime. Her audacity was as breathtaking as it was infuriating. But confrontation was not my way. I let the revelation simmer, a quiet storm forming beneath my calm exterior. I pondered the value of water, each drop a testament to resourcefulness and survival. Karen, unwittingly, taught me that even the most patient river could carve a canyon given time. Patience was my ally, and time my accomplice. I watched the leaves fall in languid spirals, each one a promise of change. Karen would learn that the scales of justice, though slow, tilt inevitably toward those who wait. I smiled softly at the thought. Her reckoning was as certain as the turning of the seasons. The sun rose with an orange glow, spilling over the rooftops like a lazy wave crashing onto a beach. It was a typical morning in our neighborhood, where each house stood in uniform rows, mirrors of one another in their sameness. But beneath the surface, a quiet rebellion simmered, one that began the moment Karen decided my water line was her own personal reservoir. Karen, with her penchant for escalating the mundane into the monumental, had taken the petty war to new heights. The mornings now greeted me not with the gentle hum of sprinklers, but with the clipped heels of her shoes, surveying the street like a general inspecting her troops. Her latest salvo in our suburban skirmish was as absurd as it was predictable, a slew of new HOA rules, each more ridiculous than the last. Lawns were to be mowed twice a week, hedges trimmed to a regulation height, trash cans hidden promptly after collection. All regulations seemed innocuous at first glance, but their true purpose, as transparent as the morning dew, was to ensnare me further into her web of control. Each day, a new notice would find its way to my mailbox, a minor citation for some imagined infraction. Gossip, like the sweetest poison, seeped through the neighborhood. Karen's whispers were serpentine, winding their way into the ears of anyone willing to listen. I saw the sidelong glances, felt the cool breeze of judgment as I walked down the street. In their eyes, I was the rebel, the one who dared defy the order she imposed. But there was power in silence. I let each new rule wash over me like rain on a window, leaving no trace on the calm surface of my demeanor. I played the part of the gentle neighbor, nodding in polite acknowledgement as Karen's proxies delivered her latest edicts. Inside, though, I plotted a counterbalance to her tyranny. The irony was delicious. Karen, in her fervor to control, had unwittingly become the architect of her own downfall. The waterline she hijacked had become a lifeline, connecting my house to hers in a way she hadn't anticipated. The new rules, though irksome, had a flaw. Their pettiness left them vulnerable, a weak link in the chain of command she tried to forge. I began to notice small things: a hedge, slightly higher than regulation, in her own backyard, a trash can, left out longer than my own. These tiny rebellions against her own rules were the chinks in her armor, evidence, should I need it, of her hypocrisy. The neighborhood meetings, once mundane gatherings, transformed into arenas. Karen, in her self-appointed role as enforcer, wielded her new rules like a club, but the murmurs grew. Others began to see the cracks, the failures in her perfect facade. A smile crept into my thoughts, not of malice, but of quiet satisfaction. The stage was set for something greater. So I waited, patiently, like a spider weaving its web, knowing that eventually Karen's machinations would ensnare her. For every drop of water she stole, for every rule she broke, the scales of justice tilted, not in loud pronouncements, but in the subtle shift of neighborhood alliances. The calm before the storm. It was a waiting game, and I had all the time in the world. The rhythm of the neighborhood continued, a symphony of normalcy with an undercurrent of discord. The sun set each evening, painting the sky in a tapestry of colors, one day closer to the inevitable unraveling. And so I watched, silent, serene, and unwavering. The air felt different after the revelation charged, like the moment before a storm unleashes its fury. I stood by the kitchen window, gaze fixed on Karen's pristine garden, the vibrant hydrangeas mocking my parched lawn. Knowledge is power, they say, and now that I had it, it was time to wield it carefully. Yesterday's discovery was still fresh in my mind, the hidden pipe, snaking its way from my property into Karen's under an artful cover of mulch and decorative stones. Ingenious. The realization that she'd been siphoning my water for her floral masterpiece ignited a quiet fury within me. But I knew better than to confront her directly. Karen was a seasoned player in neighborhood politics, with an uncanny talent for twisting any situation to her favor. My first move was methodical documentation. I spent hours photographing the clandestine plumbing, capturing every detail with the meticulousness of a detective at a crime scene. Each snapshot was a chapter in this unfolding saga, each angle an indisputable testament to her cunning. It felt good, like collecting pieces of a puzzle I was determined to solve. With proof in hand, I needed a plan, something subtle, something she wouldn't see coming. I considered my options, weighing the scales of justice and irony. The HOA meeting was this weekend, an arena where Karen thrived on her soapbox of neighborly propriety. What better stage for her fall from grace? Meanwhile, I made discreet inquiries about water usage regulations and penalties. Knowledge would be my shield and weapon. I learned more about municipal codes than I ever cared to know. but each fact fortified my resolve. I still had a few days before the meeting, time to prepare. To make sure every step was perfectly laid out, I visited the hardware store, browsing through aisles with a newfound sense of purpose. The solution came to me among the rows of adjustable wrenches and pipe fittings. A pressure valve, simple, effective, and most importantly, reversible. A little adjustment would reroute the water flow back to its rightful path without a hint of sabotage, just enough to send her lush garden into a wilting frenzy. It was a quiet rebellion, untraceable, yet potent. Installation was cathartic. As I worked, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows, whispering promises of justice. I could almost hear the plants sighing in anticipation, yearning for the return of nourishment. My hands moved with precision, each turn of the wrench a step closer to poetic retribution. The valve in place, I stood back, admiring my handiwork. It was time to wait, to watch as nature took its course. The irony of Karen's predicament was not lost on me. She'd always boasted about her green thumb, her magical touch with flora. Little did she know that magic was about to vanish, like a mirage in the desert. Saturday arrived, bringing with it the usual buzz of the neighborhood gathering. I watched from a distance as Karen mingled, her laughter grating against the backdrop of my patience. I bided my time, letting the anticipation build like a symphony reaching its crescendo. Finally, when the meeting was in full swing, I made my move. I presented my findings casually, as if discussing the weather, unveiling the evidence with the composure of a skilled artisan revealing their latest masterpiece. The room fell silent, eyes darting between Karen and the incriminating photographs. Her expression shifted, a cascade of emotions that played out like a silent film: shock, indignation, the faintest glimmer of fear. It was exquisite, as if she were a character in a play, suddenly realizing the audience had turned. And in that moment, I spoke my one line, a quiet thunder in the echoing silence. Seems some gardens bloom at the expense of others. The fallout was inevitable as the meeting adjourned. Whispers swirled like autumn leaves caught in a gust. I walked away, a quiet satisfaction settling in my bones. Justice, like water, had found its course. As I sat on my porch, the evening sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in hues of orange and purple. The neighborhood had an air of uneasy calm, like the pause before a storm. I sipped my iced tea, the condensation cool against my fingers, and watched as Karen's house stood defiantly, a fortress of manicured perfection. The waterline dispute had become the talk of the street, whispered about at mailboxes and during morning dog walks. A silent understanding spread among us, the unspoken acknowledgement of Karen's audacity. Her garden flourished unnaturally, a vibrant oasis amidst our wilting lawns, each blossom a testament to her pilfered resource. Subtle signs of unrest began to surface. Neighbors who once nodded in passing now bent towards each other like conspirators, eyes darting towards Karen's house. The realization that our water was being siphoned for her botanical bounty kindled a quiet fury, simmering beneath the surface. I knew my time would come. Patience was my ally, and I nurtured it like a well-kept secret. Karen's overconfidence was her Achilles' heel. Her hubristic belief that she could steal without consequence would lead her to stumble, and I would be there, waiting. The HOA meeting loomed, an arena where grievances would be aired and solutions demanded. It would be my stage, the culmination of quiet observations and strategic planning. I allowed my mind to wander, imagining the moment when the facade of Karen's suburban sovereignty would crack. As days passed, the neighborhood's tension became palpable, a taut string ready to snap. People began to avoid her, the sunny greetings replaced by curt nods or, more often, deliberate indifference. Her isolation grew, an invisible barrier encircling her home, separating her from the community she once dominated. One evening, as the crickets began their symphony, I noticed a small gathering in my yard, neighbors, drawn by an unspoken resolve, stood in the twilight, their faces illuminated by the soft glow of streetlights. Their presence was a silent testament to shared indignation and a readiness for change. Among them was Mrs. Parker, a retired teacher with eyes sharp as a hawk. She caught my gaze, her expression one of steely determination. A single nod from her was all it took to solidify our unspoken pact. We were ready. The meeting day arrived with a sense of anticipation hanging heavy in the air. The community center buzzed with low murmurs as people filed in. Taking their seats, Karen walked in last, her entrance commanding attention, yet the room's energy subtly shifted, no longer deferential but charged with quiet defiance. As the meeting commenced, voices rose and fell, discussions meandering through the mundane until finally, the moment arrived. I stood, the room falling into a hush, a single breath, and I began, words carefully chosen, each one a deliberate stone cast into the pond of understanding. I spoke of fairness, of community, and of the shared burden of resources. Each syllable aimed to peel away the veneer of Karen's entitlement, to reveal the raw truth beneath. Her eyes met mine, defiance flickering there but tempered with an undercurrent of unease. In that moment, a single phrase hung in the air, spoken by Mrs. Parker, cutting through the tension with surgical precision. Accountability is the price of water. It was a statement, a challenge, and a promise all at once. Karen's facade wavered, a crack appearing in the armor of her arrogance. The room held its breath, poised on the precipice of change. The moment stretched, a heartbeat suspended in time, as the neighborhood braced for the unraveling. The morning I had been waiting for, like a hunter patiently stalking its prey, finally arrived. The sun rose, casting a soft, golden glow over the suburban sprawl. It was a day that promised ordinary routines for everyone else, but not for me. Today was the day. Karen would face the consequences of her audacity, her entitlement, her sheer disregard for boundaries. I stood by my kitchen window, watching the neighborhood stir to life. Birds chirped, car engines hummed, and a distant lawnmower roared to life. All everyday symphonies of suburban existence, but beneath it all, a new current vibrated, a quiet anticipation that only I could feel. It was the calm before a different kind of storm. Weeks of meticulous planning and research had led to this moment. I had dug through property records, consulted with my lawyer, and spent countless hours with a cold, calculating determination that Karen would never suspect. She played her games openly, like a daring child who thought the world would bend to her whims. But the real power lay in the shadows, where I quietly maneuvered each piece into place. The legal papers were my sword and shield. They rested on the kitchen counter, crisp and undeniable, simple documents on the surface. Yet beneath lay the force of the law, ready to cut through the tangled web Karen had spun with her deceit. Her unauthorized tapping into my waterline was the thread, and I intended to pull it until everything unraveled. As I prepared to leave, I glanced in the mirror. My reflection revealed a calm exterior, a face that had become well practiced in concealing the storm beneath. The irony was not lost on me, how I had to appear placid and unbothered, even as my heart raced with the thrill of imminent justice. I stepped outside, the crisp air biting with a hint of autumn. Leaves crunched underfoot, scattering like whispers under my shoes. I walked with purpose, approaching Karen's house with the papers tucked under my arm, a weapon of words and legality. Each step brought me closer to an endgame she never saw coming. Karen was in her garden, a picture of suburban serenity as she pruned roses with methodical grace. She looked up, a smile painted on her face, unaware of the tempest approaching. Those few steps towards her felt like a lifetime, a slow-motion march, towards what I hoped would be a moment of realization for her. I stood before her, our eyes meeting. The smile faltered as she caught sight of the papers. No words were needed. The look in her eyes said it all. Shock, fear, and then anger. a flash of heat passing over her features like a summer storm. She had underestimated the silent current beneath my calm demeanor. The papers changed hands in silence. Her fingers, once so quick to claim what wasn't hers, now trembled slightly as they gripped the legal notices. I watched as understanding dawned, slowly and painfully, over her face. It was a painful beauty, that moment of realization, and, for once, words escaped her. I turned away, leaving her there amidst the roses, now just thorny reminders of her mistakes. Each step back to my own sanctuary felt lighter, the weight of injustice finally lifting. It was done, quietly, deliberately, with a power that didn't need to shout to be heard. Karen might have hijacked my waterline, but I had cut off her hubris at its source. Back home, the kettle whistled on the stove, a comforting sound in the aftermath of confrontation. As I poured myself a cup of tea, the steam curled upwards like a tendril of smoke, carrying with it the essence of victory, a subtle triumph, but a triumph nonetheless, in the silent war of suburban survival. As the sun stretched its golden fingers across the roofs of our neighborhood, the day of reckoning dawned with a deceptive tranquility. The air was crisp and honest, a stark contrast to the tangled web Karen had woven over the past months. My focus settled on the task ahead, with a sense of justice echoing in every heartbeat. The community had gathered like a silent jury around the meeting hall, the whispers of neighbors carrying stories of audacity and retribution. I felt their eyes like a gentle current, pushing me forward. Each gaze told its own tale of frustration, of roles reversed, of equilibrium poised to be restored. Karen stood at the center like a tempest in her own making, her presence sharp and unyielding. Yet today, the storm had lost its thunder. She was all flare with frayed edges, a queen without a kingdom. Her gaze met mine, briefly, and in that flash, I saw the fraying confidence of someone unaccustomed to accountability. I stepped forward, the weight of the community's unspoken expectations balancing on my shoulders. The evidence I had collected was irrefutable, a tapestry of her misdeeds woven from water bills and plumbing reports, each line an indictment of her greed. Yet, the real power lay not in papers, but in the communal resolve surrounding her. As the facts unrolled, I watched Karen's facade crack like aged porcelain, her colors dulled, bravado stripped away by the undeniable truth. There was an irony in her silence, in the way her own ostentatious world turned on her. Each piece of evidence was a brick in her self-built prison, walls steadily rising to cage her audacity. In the end, it was not the documents that held the most weight, but the quiet consensus of a neighborhood united against one unruly force. Karen's empire of defiance crumbled under the collective sigh of relief, and with it, the water flowed back to its rightful owners, the symbolic return of what she had taken. With Karen's influence now a shadow of its former self, the community began to mend. Conversations sprouted like wildflowers on a spring morning, vibrant and new. Neighbors who once nodded in passing now lingered to talk, to remember the strength found in unity. It was the rebirth of something genuine. Karen, ever the force of nature, retreated to her corner of the world, her domain reduced to whispers and sideways glances. Her story now served as a cautionary tale, a reminder of the inevitable fall that comes when one stands too tall on the backs of others. Standing in the warmth of a late afternoon sun, I reflected on the journey that brought us to this point. Victory was not in the downfall of one, but in the rise of many. The neighborhood had found its voice, and in its quiet strength, Karen had been sidelined. The water, once a symbol of her control, now flowed freely, carrying with it the lessons of a hard-earned resolution. And as I turned to leave, I felt the reassuring weight of eyes on my back, a silent nod to the power of standing firm in the face of a storm.